was an amazing thing to be a part of. But as I was talking with some of the people there in Mexico, I'm like, so what do you think's going to happen? They said, it's fixed. Election's fixed. So-and-so's going to win. And I said, okay, but what if the other guy wins? And they said, oh, there'll be a riot. Excuse me, I'd like to go back home now. I'd like to go back to the Constitution of the United States that says I have the freedom to speak. I have the freedom to express who I am. Lord, don't let me get in the middle of a riot. Now, somebody broke the news to me later. It would probably happen more down in Mexico City than it would right on the border of the United States and Mexico. But still, I had an identity issue. I've had an identity issue every time I've crossed the border to go into Mexico. And I have an identity issue coming back because I got to prove I have the right to come in to the United States. If you've never crossed the border into Mexico, it's quite an interesting experience. Because when you go into Mexico, here's what they do. Guys got this gun slung across them, but they're just waving, come on in! You go to the United States, you feel like you're being interrogated. It's like, Lord, please let them know my identity. But Ruth had to give up part of her identity. You see, she was a Moabite. She had this history. She had this culture. She knew the expectations. We have this in the United States also. I mean, truthfully, would you rather have northern sweet tea or southern sweet tea? And if you're with me, it's southern sweet tea. Sweet, sugary, syrup, great. Some people are like, you're crazy. Yeah, I am, but it's still good. We have these cultural differences. We have the cultural differences that when we get together, just through the dialect, just through the way that we speak and the words that we use, we know where somebody's from relatively quickly. I had a friend in seminary who was from Georgia. Nothing against Georgians, but just listen to me for a second. Scott was from Georgia, and he got one of his first papers back in seminary, and it looked like the professor had blood all over it. And I said, what happened? He goes, man, he just ate me up. And somewhere on the paper it did say something about possibly going and looking into a remedial English course. And I told him, I said, Scott, here's the deal. You just need to go into the professor and tell him that English is your second language. Georgian is your first. He enjoyed the laugh, but he never did go to the professor, which I thought would have been quite hysterical to have watched. But we understand that identity. We have an identity, and for those of you who are married, you can even better understand. The family of origin, and as we come together, as we unite as husband and wife, and we come and we bring all of that together, there's some identity things that have to be dealt with. Ruth says, my identity, your people, Naomi, will be my people. I accept that in my life. She goes on, and she says, your God will be my God. This is a conversion experience. That's how we would speak of it in today's culture, in today's church. She is converting from this Moabite god or gods to the one true God, Yahweh. This is an actual conversion experience. She is moving from being a Moabite believer to being a converted Jewish or Israelite believer. Do you understand the power of what is going on here? I've been in church all my life. So I haven't had that amazing, whoa, experience. Where I have been, some people talk about being in the pit of despair and so gone, so lost, you didn't even think God could find you, but one day you had this experience of Christ in your life. He turned your life around and whoa. I've talked with people who have shared that with me, and I'm just, for a time I was jealous. Wow, what an experience. But this changing from making other things our God to God being the one and only. It's this identity that goes from being me-focused to being God-focused, from being temporally focused to being eternally focused. She has to give up control. I like to be in control. Because when you're in control, you know what's going on. I mean, would you rather drive or be in the passenger seat? Drive. Right here. Give me the driver's wheel. And so for a long time when I first began to fly, that was difficult for me. It wasn't that I was afraid of flying. It was that I didn't know what was going on up there. And having a guy that I know who's a pilot, I even want to know more about what's going on up there in the pilot's seat sometimes. But we like that control. See, I believe, theologically, I believe that we have freedom. We have free will. We have the freedom to say yes or no to God. And what is ironic about our freedom, it's this. We have the freedom to give away our freedom to give God control. It's odd, but that's what our freedom is. Our freedom is to say, God, I am going to mess this up atrociously. Why don't you take control? And that's what Ruth is doing when she says, Naomi, I will go where you go. I will stay where you stay. It's an issue of control and her giving up control. You ever heard of Ruth before now? I mean, it's just this obscure book caught in between Judges and 1 Samuel. It's just kind of sitting there. Some could say, well, they really don't know all the purpose for it, but I want to share with you the purpose. You see, Ruth shows back up in the New Testament in Matthew chapter 1, verses 5 through 6, where it says, Solomon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. This Ruth that we speak of is in the very lineage of Jesus the Christ. This Moabite widow, this woman who has had this conversion experience from being a Moabite believer to being a God-fearing Israelite Jew, all of a sudden is put smack dab in the middle of our history as Christian people. Ruth is right there in the midst of it, in the lineage of King David. And who but did Christ come from but the house and the line of David? Where did Naomi and her husband live but in Bethlehem in Judah? Who is this woman? She's a woman who said, I will take a chance here. Because, folks, if she would have went back to Moab, her life would have been, by all intents and purposes, normal. Normal. It just would have been a Moabite life. She would have went back, probably gotten a husband, probably had children, and we wouldn't have the book of Ruth in our scriptures. But Ruth took a chance. She risked, and out of that she received a blessing.